Okay, welcome everyone. I'm really excited to be part of this program of Arakawa's The Thieves in discussion. More than 50 years later, this program will discuss the unusual history behind this drawing's acquisition to the Wadsworth's collection. As the title of this program suggests here, an art theft was involved in the acquisition of this drawing to the collection. And here today we have 5 thieves who were MFA students at Rutgers in 1969 when they stole the painting. So welcome to the thieves. We have Kathy Gregory, Marilyn Landis Greenberg, Russell Lewis, David Crane, and Scott Kahn. All, as I said, were MFA students at Rutgers and are still practicing artists more than 50 years later, which I think is really fantastic. So here we're looking at the Dwan Gallery, an installation of Arakawa's paintings in 1969. And the Wadsworth painting is on the left in this image. So, Thieves. You all saw this show in 1969. This was a time when conceptual art and happenings were the current movements. And you took the text on this canvas to be a kind of call to action. So would you tell us a little bit about this initial discussion that you had? This would have been on November 10th, 1969, 3 days before the actual heist. Would anyone like to jump in?
Well, we didn't see the piece altogether. These were sort of individual trips into the city. And at that time, the Dwan Gallery was sort of the hot gallery in town. So we all sort of, as sort of just the way that graduate students do, is to go and see what's the, the latest and greatest. And just happen to, hang out at lunch and say, well, obviously this is what the artists intended. And so we just later got together and made a plan.
I think we had great discussions about the quote unquote meaning of the painting.
Right.
Whether it meant to steal the whole thing, to copy one of the very ephemeral drawings on the painting, to steal the actual sentence, and all the possibilities. What did the artist really mean? And I think we talked at great length about this, and finally decided that we needed to steal the painting.
At the same time, in our previous discussion, some of you said that you were not really believers in conceptual art, and that this was something that you kind of approached with some skepticism. Would one of you like to talk about that?
I felt very, very provoked by it. It was a kind of a challenge. To be honest, I wasn't then, and I remain not a huge fan of conceptual art. So I felt it was something that I felt provoked by and wanted to take some kind of action to express my feelings about it.
Yeah, it was my basic disrespect for the whole movement that actually
that's what I wanted to hear.
allowed me to have the freedom to say what and do it.
Yeah, I think it's really great that you all came at this from different places. But let's talk about who did what. Because you first met about it on November 10th, and just 3 days later, you actually put that in action. So let's talk about who did what part, because there was some distraction of the gallerist at the front desk that was involved in this, and someone holding the elevator, and someone waiting down on the street with the getaway car. So Kathy, what was your part?
David and I went upstairs, and what you can't see is to the left of the painting is a wall, and the receptionists were on the other side of the wall, which was really convenient. So David and I, God only knows what we talked about, but art on one level or another. And my job was to sort of sneak around the corner and see if the painting was still there, and then continue the conversation, and then sort of trying to do it so that nobody would be suspicious. And then at one point the painting was gone, and we thought, okay, well, thank you very much. And we got in the elevator and went downstairs. And meanwhile, Marilyn.
Yes, I was downstairs in the getaway car, which is really fabulous to think about because I have absolutely no sense of direction. I was in the getaway car, and unfortunately, next to the building that the Dwan Gallery was in was the Steinway piano store. And a truck came up next to me, ready to deliver pianos, and was going to block me in. And I became absolutely frantic. I thought, oh my God, they're going to come down with the painting and I'm going to be stuck here and the police are going to come and it's going to be really frightening. And I got out of the car and explained, well, I'm not in a rush, but the people I'm with are in a real rush. You really have to move this truck.
And they have guns.
Okay, so who lifted the painting off the wall?
I did. Scott and I went up in the elevator, and Scott stayed and held the elevator so nobody else could use it while I took the painting off the wall.
Yeah.
And you got to know that this is a big painting. This is, 4 by 8. Really, that's sizable.
Yeah. It is.
Thank goodness it fit in the car.
Or the elevator.
I know.
I think it was 4 by 6.
Yeah, because sometimes paintings have to go, I know this from my museum, sometimes things have to go up stairways because you can't fit them in the elevator. So you got lucky if you didn't plan that in advance.
Well, when you guys got down there, didn't you find that it like barely fit? And we all sort of were horrified at the thought is, what if the painting had been stolen? We're down there, we can't get it in the car.
Yeah.
I never gave that any thought.
So I just wanted to show this image of the painting itself so that the text would be apparent, that it states, if possible, steal any one of these drawings, including this sentence, is what is in the lighter tones.
You're making me wonder now what the other paintings, what the aphorisms were stenciled on the other paintings. Was this the only one that provoked us? I can't remember any of the other paintings and what was stenciled on them.
That's a good question, but this one in particular does seem to have a directive, doesn't it? And I should say that many of these pictures are coming from a book that documents this whole heist and the acquisition of the work into the Wadsworth collection. So that's where many of the images are coming from. And this is the cover of the book. But again, here's the gallery. And then here are 4 of you with the getaway car. Marilyn, was this your car?
I know that I was driving, but I don't remember the car. Which is very strange.
It was my father's 1965 Chevrolet station wagon.
I'm sure he would appreciate that you used in an art.
What's that?
I'm sure your father would not have appreciated your using his car.
No, I'm sure he wouldn't have. Yeah.
But here in the picture, so we have in order left to right, Marilyn, Kathy, Scott, and Russell.
David.
And Russell, you took the photograph, I assume.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, but there was a problem with when you started out the day that we haven't talked about yet with the flat tire. What happened? What happened there? Imagine if you had gotten the flat tire on the other end.
I think we had agreed to meet at the office where the graduate school was on Douglas College campus at a certain time, and I came down from my apartment and in a timely manner, but the tire was flat on the back tire in the car, and so I swapped out the spare onto the car and proceeded with the day. And I can't imagine now talking about taking risks, driving to New York City without a spare tire and back. You know, it was just insane.
Especially with what you were planning to do that day.
Yes, exactly. It's sort of like why you see drug smugglers speeding, you know, duh.
Yeah. What I also love about this photograph is that you can see that the painting is kind of wedged or inclined in the back of the car. You can just see the edge of it.
Yeah.
Like right along here.
Right.
Does anybody remember who sat in the back seat?
Yeah, how did we all get in there?
I think I was in the back, but I don't remember being all that squished. But I do remember a slight ability to look out the window, and on the way back, suddenly seeing more cops than I ever would have imagined, just because we'd done this dirty deed.
Yeah.
Who knew?
When was it that someone wondered about taking a stolen painting across state lines?
Yeah.
Never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Never.
Not until that note on the telegram that somebody wrote about the FBI.
Yeah.
You know,
that's
being
right.
called.
So let's keep going forward. We'll get to the telegrams. So after you stole the painting and went back to New Brunswick, then you sent a telegram to the gallery, and this is a copy of that telegram. So states that the drawing is safe, that the work is completed, respond, and then awaited a response from the gallery and artist.
I kind of assumed that what he would do is say, "Oh, that's nice, you can return it now."
Yeah.
Right. So actually, I have the response from the artist, and here he states that the work not exactly completed. Interesting misunderstanding. There are still ways to effect a removal and various degrees of passion through which to seal. Please donate to public institution only as the Thieves, with complete documentation of what has occurred. It's been a great surprise to collaborate with you. So but then you also got a response from the gallery separately that wanted you to return it. And that's the one that had this note with a police officer or FBI agent illusion written on the bottom. So I would have been scared about that too. This is actually very reassuring, this particular telegram. So
certainly sped things up.
So then you had to start compiling the documentation, and I particularly love these mugshots that you guys made from photo booth photos. And I just think it's incredibly clever. These are included in the publication. Whose idea was that? Do you remember?
Where did we go? Where did we go to do that?
I guess when we learned that we were going to be called the Thieves, maybe that was the germ of the idea. I don't know.
Yeah, because then this whole book itself becomes a conceptual art piece. It's just really terrific. So then this was kind of the template letter that you sent to a number of museums, and it's a very brief letter that explains that you've stolen a painting and want to donate it to a museum, without noting that this was the artist's wishes. So it does leave that open to having a museum think that we're not going to accept a stolen painting. Was that intentional?
Oh, that's a good question.
Marilyn, did you write the letter?
I think I did. I mean, people seem to remember that, and I think I was a little bossy at that time. So I think I wanted to come up with this concept. And I thought it was kind of funny that we would say, hello, museum, we have this stolen painting. Would you like it for your collection? And we had no idea the variety of responses we would get. And we were very fascinated. Kathy, I think, was the address that it was sent to. So she would receive these responses and we would just regale with laughter at them.
Yeah, and I would like fly to the post box every day because I was so excited. You know, getting mail in graduate school is just exciting, and then knowing that these were going to be the responses. Oh man, that was great.
Right. So let's look at the list. Yeah, go ahead, Russell. Were you saying something?
It was also the address that we knew the FBI would come to first.
Yeah, there you go, Kathy. Here's a list of museums that you sent this letter to. And I don't think you heard back from everyone, but you heard back from quite a few.
Good.
Because the reply letters are all included in the publication as well. So it's quite a range of museums. I think I'm thrilled that the Wadsworth made the list. And I somehow, Scott, was that your doing since you're from Springfield originally?
Well, maybe it was my suggestion. My mother was living in West Hartford at the time, and I'd been to the Wadsworth a few times. So
yeah,
that must have occurred to me.
Yeah, well, I thank you for that.
Well, I love the Wadsworth. It was a fantastic museum, gem of a museum, really.
Oh, well, thank you. I'll take that compliment. So here's the Wadsworth's reply by telegram to the letter. And you can see that it's dated November 23rd. And so it's my understanding, but some of you, I think differently, that the Wadsworth was actually the first to reply. It's certainly the first museum to reply according to what's published in the book. So, so here the Wadsworth says, yes, we'd like to start procedures, but understand there's a process. You know, there's a collections committee that the work has to go through, which is the case with every museum, that there's a whole process. So it's not a real straight, yes, bring it over. It's always much more complicated than that. But I credit the Wadsworth with replying so quickly. And it's signed by Peter Marlowe, who was the chief curator. And at the time, the director was Jim Elliott. And Jim Elliott is the director who really pushed the contemporary program at the Wadsworth. So it makes sense to me, knowing the history of the museum, that this would be an exciting work to bring into the collection. But let's see. Oh, and so here's a really funny reply. You talked about the funny replies, and this is the most concise. I think it's hilarious. It's just, it seems that Henry Geldzaler didn't even want to bother replying, so he made it as brief as possible. So basically he just says, no thanks.
Well, there's a backstory to that letter.
Oh, do tell.
Well, Arakawa and Geldzaler were having a problem with each other. And he believes that's why he wrote that letter that way.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
No, I didn't either.
Yeah.
Yeah. Henry wanted a painting from Arakawa, and Arakawa didn't want to give him that one.
Wow. That's some inside information.
Yeah.
Well, if that's true, there's, the first telegram from Arakawa reveals a little bit of his self-interest and ambition, wanting to get 2 paintings into museum collections. And also when he mentions in his telegram to donate it as the Thieves and not identifying ourselves, so that he remains the focus of the donation, really. I mean, it's, if you think about it, it's kind of revealing a little bit about Arakawa.
Yeah, yeah.
An artist ego, right?
Yes.
Or ambition. Yeah, ambition.
Yes. You can't blame him, but it's there.
Right. So here, you know, one of you is always taking the photographs. So here are 4 of you in front of the Wadsworth Atheneum on Main Street. The museum is to the right, and you can just see a piece of the building. But here you are delivering the painting on December 20th, 1969. So really just 5 weeks after the theft, this whole thing was concluded. I think it's a really fast timeline in museum time. I'll tell you that. So you guys really moved this forward, and this is before all of the quick pace things that we can do online, right, through online correspondence. So all of this was done through mail correspondence. Amazing. Yep. What do you remember about delivering the painting that day?
Oh God, I just thought we were going to drop off the painting and that was going to be it. And then all of a sudden there were cameras and television people. And do I remember right that they gave us a tour of the basement where they stored other paintings? It seems to me I remember that we got a chance to do that. And that was just an enormous thrill for me to be in the basement in the bowels of a museum and get to see this stuff. But the surprise was all of the press. I was completely surprised about that.
I bet they took you to storage to show you how secure the museum is and that no one would be stealing anything from the Wadsworth. That's kind of funny. I like that. Yeah, and so here's some of that press that you alluded to, Kathy. So here in the press on the left, it notes the Atheneum accepts theft-prone painting. So can someone talk about the other theft that happened with this painting that surprised you as part of this project?
Well, I remember receiving a call from Russell, and he was very calm on the phone. And I think I started screaming. Tell them what you said, Russell.
Well, I was surprised at what happened. I guess I shouldn't have been, since I'd known Ed Heath for about a year and probably haven't said 5 words to him. All of a sudden he wants to come over to my studio. It would have been some kind of a flag. But you know, we had separate things going besides just the painting. And I thought he was coming. He said he was coming to see my work. He didn't say he was coming to see Arakawa painting. So,
so he stole it out of your studio?
Right. My studio was 2 levels. It was ground level and it had a large basement. And he talked me into going down to see the whole rest of the studio, which involves going down to the basement. And then when we came up, the painting was gone. So, well, Ed and I were down in the basement. He had a friend of his take the painting.
Accomplice, yeah.
And I forget who it was that walked in the studio and said, "Oh, the painting's been stolen from us." And I'm like, "Yeah, right. Yeah, funny joke. Haha." And it just took a few minutes before it sunk in that, oh my God, it had been stolen from us too. And that just threw everything, you know, upside down.
We must have told our fellow classmates then that we had done this, and I don't recall all of that. I wonder what the professors thought about our theft. I don't recall any response from them.
Scott, I think in the book, Scott, it alludes to after you stole the painting, you presented it in a gallery and told the story. Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember. I don't remember that. I mean, after all, Rutgers at the time was a very conceptually oriented program. So I can't remember the response of the faculty.
I remember suggesting to, maybe I could be my faculty advisor, that I just present him with the book as my thesis.
Oh,
There you go.
You know, no more typewriter. But he said, no, I don't think so.
Nice try, though. Oh, so I wanted to also show where the painting is currently installed in our galleries today. So it's currently on view at the Wadsworth Atheneum in this section of the contemporary art collection galleries that's focused on conceptual art. So that makes sense. But we do need to get more presentation of the story there. So we're going to somehow link this talk to a QR code or something on the label so that people can find it, because I think the story really brings this drawing to life in a really great way.
One of the things that I sort of take away from this is I think I learned more about the art world and the art experience from this action than I did all of my years in Rutgers, because it exposed us to sort of egos. It exposed us to the real business part of the art world. And that was not a topic that was ever broached in any of my classes or with any of my professors. You did it because you did it. And so I just have to give us, Thieves, kind of a kudos for educating us in the real world in a way that school did not.
I think that's
very true.
Really
very true.
Mm-hmm. Because it's a known, your art students. It's a known artist. It's a top-notch gallery. It's the New York art scene. It's also involving the museum world and process it for museums. Yeah. I think it's a really interesting story because it touches on all those different aspects.
Well, we ended up meeting Arakawa and Madeline Gins, his wife, who was a well-known poet, and Lawrence Alloway, who was a very well-known art writer and critic.
So let's talk a little bit about that meeting, because I would imagine that would have been exciting, but maybe also a little awkward. And like, is he actually okay with this, or is he a little angry about it? How did you feel going into that, and how did it play out?
Oh, I felt that he was very much on board with it, that it was an exciting collaboration for him, and an unexpected one that he really came to appreciate as a collaboration, and something that would really also boost his career. And
yes.
It was a very interesting and amiable meeting.
Yeah.
Who suggested that we publish the documents? Was it Lawrence Alloway?
No, it was Virginia Dwan of the gallery. And I have to say, as much as it was a brilliant marketing coup on her part, at the same time, to have documentation of a painting stolen from your own gallery, to me, it was just like, my goodness, what an interesting way to do that, and what an interesting thought. And it certainly put us in a position of scrambling around for our receipts and taking photos and just sort of pulling the whole thing together. And in a way, it gave us a different kind of purpose.
Well, it dragged us into a conceptual project, which I don't think any of us really were in our own work, in our own practice. We weren't that kind of conceptual artists as students at the time, anyway.
Yeah.
Definitely, I recall the feeling of ambition going it was in the atmosphere on the part of Dwan and all the other characters, Alloway and Arakawa himself, how they could benefit from bringing this forward and bringing it to life.
And Jeff Hendricks, who taught at the university, insisted that we put this sort of funky thing on the back cover about, I forget what it says, but he insisted that it go there. it had nothing to do with anything that I thought of, but he insisted. And so it was sort of his way of entering the fray.
That's interesting too.
Yeah, so on the back, since I have a book in hand, there's a box that you can see that has it's a checkbox. So you either check yes or no to this question, which is, do you like this book?
Ah.
It's another kind of conceptual
twist.
I think another angle.
None of us like that idea very much.
Another angle to the self-promotion is, I think I understood at the time that Virginia Dwan owned the printer, which was a Colorcraft lithographer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I was taking money out of one pocket and putting in the other, which is never.
Yeah. Well, it's a great book, and it's
the Museum of Modern Art pitch in some money to publish the book.
Oh, I think you might be right.
Is that right? Oh.
We had to raise some money to publish the book.
Huh.
And that was, I think, Alloway's suggestion to approach them.
The gallery stepped up and took care of that.
Yeah.
Then
it would be distributed at the Museum of Modern Art as well.
Mm-hmm. As I said at the top of the program, all of you are still practicing artists, which I just think is fantastic. And so I wanted to take an opportunity to just show a work by each of you and have you just say a few words about your current practice. Okay, so Kathy, you're first.
Oh, thanks. I've been doing 2D work my whole life with the idea of making it look three-dimensional. And I was on the phone with a friend and I said, the things that really float my boat are three-dimensional sculpture, color, and wit. And after the conversation, I thought, what the heck? I've got 2 degrees in sculpture. What am I doing? So I jumped into doing this kind of thing, hoping at some point to make them very large so that the viewer really needs to walk around the whole piece to get an idea of what it's all about, what's around the corner. And I look to people like Barbara Hepworth and Isamu Noguchi because their pieces really are the kinds of things where you look around the corner to what's around the corner. Whereas people like sculptors like even Picasso, so much of his work is frontal, and the three-dimensional quality, which I find so wonderfully compelling to work with, doesn't always come through. So this is the direction that I'm going in now.
No, and that idea also, I think the Wadsworth has a major Tony Smith on its front lawn, and when you walk around a Tony Smith, it just changes completely. So yeah. That idea, I think, is really important to monumental sculpture, to have different experiences as you circumnavigate.
It's the fun of it.
Yep. Thank you. So Marilyn.
So tell me a little bit about your work. Let's talk about this one that we have on the screen right now. What's its title and what are some of the ideas behind it?
Well, this is called Remains of the Day. And this is a painting in which I use a lot of my quote unquote imagery, which for instance, the circle, which has so many possible illusions. This is I believe it's an 82 by 82 inch painting.
Large.
It's acrylic on canvas. I like a little tooth in the canvas. So even with the very, very geometric shapes, because it gives it a little body for me. And what I did in this painting is use the circle, which I've used in a number of paintings in this series, to create a narrative. The narrative of things falling in the two sides, the bottom, which almost has allusions to nature and things going back into the ground, the sort of empty space, which sort of is impending nightfall. And I like the idea of using all kinds of symbols, ciphers, in unusual ways, because for me, it feels like the viewer can read the painting again and again. It gives the painting a kind of resonance where they can reinvent their concept of it continually.
That's right. They're abstract enough that you can project your own reading onto them. And yet for you, they're actually quite personal.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia.
Russell.
I use a combination of different things in my work. They turn out to be collages, I guess. I use photo inkjet printing and acrylic, and they're on either photo paper or mounted on
How big is this, Russell? How big is this?
What's that? They're very small. They're 4 by 6 inches.
I think they're really beautiful.
Yeah.
The original idea was that they were to be sketches for something larger, but I've been doing them for so long, the larger ones don't seem to appear anymore. So
too much work.
Oh, wonderful. David has turned to stained glass as his medium.
Yeah, when I graduated from Rutgers, I took a temporary job at a stained glass studio, and here I am 50 years later still doing it. This is St. David, the middle section of a group of windows, and it's installed in St. David's Lutheran Church in northeast Philadelphia. And I picked this to show because it sort of demonstrates all of the physical and conceptual skills it had to learn in order to accomplish that kind of work with construction, painting on glass, and design and fabrication.
It's really beautiful, beautifully designed. And Scott.
Oops, sorry. That's not me. well, I always describe my work as a visual diary. I'm inspired by things that I see in life or experiences I have. So there's a variety of subject matter to my work. This is a fairly recent painting, but it's kind of inspired by a painting from decades ago when I lived in Sag Harbor at the end of Long Island, and a dealer said to me, you should revisit that subject because people don't know that body of work. So it put that thought in my head, and I was glad I did it because this particular one kind of updated the composition and the image to a little bit more of the way I'm painting now. So it's a house in Sag Harbor that was owned by Alexander Brooke and Gina Neat, two very well-known artists in the 30s and 40s. It's called Point House Moon.
Great. It's has anyone ever talked to you, spoken about your work in terms of like magical realism?
Oh, people use all kinds of descriptive words or references and specific artists. I'm always lumped in with some very nice artists, which is very gratifying. But I also realize that I'm not sort of a copy or that similar to all the artists that are compared to. I think it's important for artists at some point in their lives to throw off derivative elements in their work. And this was something that happened to me quite a few years after I left Rutgers. And it was a conscious effort to throw off derivative elements. Creates a void, voids get filled, but eventually it's the only way to find your own voice.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's wonderful. So
thank you.
It's a beautiful painting. And so, I want to leave a little time for a few questions if we have any questions in the chat. But here's the painting and the book cover. And let's see if there are any questions. Oops. Sorry.
I think somebody wanted to know if we as students had known Arakawa's work ahead of time. And I have to say for myself, the answer is no, which is, I think, one of the reasons that going to the gallery was kind of interesting on a bunch of levels, and being introduced to someone whose work, you know, begged action was a first for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So was this the only kind of happening or act that any of you did in your artistic lives?
Well, later I did a couple of things. There was an area in my town of Somerville, which was a gateway into the town, and it was under construction and kind of a mess. And I was feeling badly that people coming to my town, this would be their introduction. So early one morning, some colleagues and I went out just as it was breaking dawn and put in 250 pinwheels all around the construction area and disappeared. And later on, it was a big hit. And later on, as I was picking up the pinwheels, because at some point they started to fall over and I didn't want it to contribute to it, this big truck driver drives up and says, "Are you responsible for this?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I've been telling my wife about this. Can I take a picture? This is the best thing that ever happened." And I was so thrilled that, you know, my reason to be for doing this was resonating with the local population. So in a way I've continued it, but I, again, would not consider that necessarily conceptual art. It just was something that needed to be done.
Yeah, those kinds of interventions are always welcome surprises, and they can be. Let's see, so another, we talked about that you met Arakawa. Yeah, someone really loved the police photos, which I agree, they're hilarious. Let's see. After the theft and the acceptance at the Wadsworth, did Arakawa ever meet with the thieves at Rutgers? We talked about that too. Well, that was before the Wadsworth accepted it that you met with Arakawa, didn't you?
Right.
Yeah, David, yeah.
Yeah.
And there was never any kind of symposium or anything, just that press meeting. And it was covered really, it was covered in the press. It was in the New York Times, you know, even before the donation to the institution, it was in the New York Times. So, you know, very early on, you know, before.
And that was a wonderful article too. It really covered so many bases and was well written and well thought out. I was impressed and delighted.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that also, you know, like you said, this was great press for Arakawa. If he was ambitious, that this was really it was really great that he embraced this surprise project. So it really served him very well, I think.
And it kept us out of jail.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting that never even really crossed your minds.
To be 22 again.
Really?
22 and clueless.
Yes.
Really?
So we're thieves and we're co-authors. That's a pretty fun thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I think you can buy the book online. The last time I looked, you could buy it somewhere for like $40.
Wow.
Oh, good. I'm glad it's still out there because I know that we only have a few copies at the museum, and so, you know, we can't even put it in our own bookstore while we have the work on view and are really highlighting it. So it's good to know that they're out there as well.
They're collectibles.
Yeah, right.
Right. This is not a question, but Kathy should make it clear that her sculpture is a prototype, yeah, for a larger work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And someone asked what happened after the drawing was restolen. Well, you guys got it back and obviously moved forward with the project going into the collection.
I believe we took the getaway car down to Trenton to retrieve it.
Really? So it was moved a distance?
I think Ed He was either an intern or employee of the Trenton Museum at the time.
I don't remember that.
He could have lost his job over such a thing.
I would guess he talked to a guy whose name was Buki, the director at the time. I would guess he would talk to him first.
Yeah, Buki is definitely mentioned in the book. I don't recall specifically.
Zoltan was his first name, Zoltan Buki.
Mm-hmm. Great name.
Hungarian.
Was there ever any threat of prosecution from anyone regarding this?
It was more in our heads after we figured out what we'd really done.
Oh.
I know that spring after this happened, there was a theft at Rutgers Museum in New Brunswick. And I don't know if anybody else was interviewed, but I was interviewed by the FBI immediately.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
It was a 10 Japanese John's prints that were on display at the museum. And they came to me the next day.
Wow.
I don't know if anybody else had any interaction with the FBI.
And then shortly after, and I can't remember the timeline, somebody like Jerry Rubin put out a book, Stolen or something like that. You remember? And there was a big fuss about it because it was the same name as ours or some such thing as that.
Mm.
I think the title was Steal This Book.
That's right.
That's right. That's right. I know that. Yes, that's right. Stole your idea.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Okay, so I think that's all the questions. There's some appreciative notes in here, but I think that's all the questions. And so do any of you want to add anything to this? Has it been fun to revisit it after more than 50 years? I can't believe that it happened that long ago.
Yeah. One thing that might be interesting to people is that at Rutgers, at that time, 69 and 70, we had a professor named Robert Watts, who was a large proponent of an art movement called Fluxus.
Mm-hmm.
And it was sort of a conceptual art kind of movement. And he also had a partner at Rutgers named Jeff Hendricks, another professor who was also big in the Fluxus movement. And they actually, I remember, put on some kind of happening or performance. There was a church there on the Douglas College campus. And it wasn't a black mass or anything, but it was like a Fluxus event.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine that the influence of those two professors sort of also inspired us to do what we did.
But now that you say Douglas College Gallery, David, I have to say that in the book, I think that's where the painting was presented on some level before it was done.
Yeah. Yeah, at that time, the graduate school was run out of Douglas College.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, that all makes sense. Thank you all so much for doing this program. It's been so great to meet you all, and oh dear.
Thank you for doing it.
Oh yeah, it's been great fun. And it's fun because we were not all five in touch with all five of us. I was in touch with someone who was in touch with someone, and Russell was just not to be found except for the last minute. So this has been really fun. And I hope that we continue our collaboration in one form or another, whether it's thievery or not, who knows.
I'm grateful we're all here alive today after all these years. It's really kind of remarkable when you think about it.
Alive and still artists, so I think it's great. And I do have to give a thank you to my friend Stephen Hepworth, who was working at the Reversible Destiny Foundation, which is the Arakawa Foundation, who told me that some of the thieves were still around, and he knew some of you from Facebook. And so I got in touch with a couple of you who each knew someone else. And so all 5 of us managed to get together. So it's, you know, it's been a lot of fun. And so thank you to Stephen Hepworth, and thank you all. This has been a really fun road to go back down, and come visit us at the museum.
We will do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.